what I want to talk to you guys about today on the live is about shame. And I want to talk about how we internally process shame and why shame is one of the most debilitating things when it comes to your relationships. And not just when your relationships, your sense of self. In fact, I keep saying this to people that you cannot actually love all of you if you're still shaming, rejecting, or denying or judging a past version of you. And so you cannot fully accept and love who you are if you're shaming and judging a past version of yourself. Now, if that is the truth, right? And we all want to get to this place where we really love ourselves, because in a relationship, let me ask you a question. I want you to really answer this. Do you want your partner to see you at your best, or do you want your partner to see you as being, whether it's mediocre or average or substandard? Where do you want your partner to see you? Do you want your partner to see you at your best? I want you guys to answer this. Do you want your partner to see you at your best, or do you want your partner to see you where you just feel like you're not good enough? So you're showing up to your partner at your best, or the other option is you're showing up to your partner where you're not actually being your best self, you're not loving your best self, and therefore you're not giving the best of who you are. I want you to throw that in the chat. For me, personally, I want in all my relationships to show up as my best self, and I want to attract the type of relationships that can see me and love me for who I really am. So everybody knows, and we want to be our best self. So then here's the next question. So is it our partner's responsibility then, therefore, to see us at our best and to work through our own wounds, or is it our own responsibility to work through that? Now, the reason why I bring this up is because whenever you go into a relationship, right, shame can be so powerful and it can be processed through many different things, even if it's like a physical experience. Let's say you had something traumatic happen to you physically, or you had a traumatic sexual experience, or even you were physically abused as a child based on like what somebody else thought or felt of you. You now take this story with you, attaching to this story, you take it to each of your relationships, and it limits you from feeling connection. It limits you from like the real love you can have. It limits you and makes you overcompensate when you're trying to find love and connection. So let's rewind and just first understand what on earth shame is. Shame is actually when a part of you, right? Whether it's you, whether it's an emotion, the way you look, the way you act, something maybe you even did. Some part of you or who you are was severely judged or criticized or rejected by somebody you loved in your life, by people who mattered to you in your life. And when that happens, you internalize it as shame. So shame happens when some part of you or who you are, how you express yourself, gets rejected or judged or criticized by somebody else. And what happens when they're judging this part of you, when they're judging who you are, you, because you love these people, or you want that validation, you want their attention, you want their affection, you want their approval so much, when you're not getting that and instead they're giving you the opposite, which is they're criticizing some part of you, you now start to think, whoa, is there something wrong with me? Is there something bad with me? Is there something where I'm not good enough? If you have that for year on year on year, where you're receiving, instead of love and approval for who you really are, you're receiving shame and criticism and judgment for who you are. After you receive this, like with your subconscious mind over years and years of conditioning, you now start to believe this story as being a part of you. This is why so many people, so many adults who have this shame about their body, it didn't actually start when they were adults and they're just suddenly looking at magazines and whatever else. It started when they were young and people expected or held them to a higher or different standard than who they were. People wanted them to look a certain way. People expected them to look a certain way. People expected them to act or believe or choose what they wanted. So imagine, let me give you an example with this, right? Hey, Andrea, one of my former students, so good to see you on here. Imagine when you're younger and you want or choose something different from what your caregivers or your environment wants or chooses. Let's say it's a religion. Let's say you believe suddenly in like fucking Hinduism, but your entire family is maybe like Catholic or whatever else. Now, when they don't understand you for who you are, and so instead they're like, what is this bullshit that you're choosing? What is this like fake Buddhism crap? What is this weird blah, 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 whatever you're doing? The way that they project their lack of understanding onto you is to shame you for doing that, because ultimately they want to control you, or they want you not to choose that. They want you to choose what they want. The same thing happens with sexuality. Let's say that you identify in some time of your life as choosing a different sexual priority or choice of partner than what your family expects you. So let's say you ultimately, you wanted to choose a same-sex partner, but your family didn't understand it. They don't understand where it comes from. They're not from that system. They're conditioned in their own ways. So now, because they don't understand you and they can't accept you for your choices or who you are, the first thing they'll do is they'll project it onto you and they'll shame you. They'll judge you. They'll make you feel small. And when you go through this for years and years on end, you now internalize this and make this a part of your own identity. Now, what's so fucking crazy is after 20 years of having experienced this so much, when you remove yourself from that same situation, you no longer have that external influence, but the problem is you've now become that same demon who now shames yourself. This is how the subconscious mind works when it comes to conditioning. When a child is exposed to a certain condition, a child is exposed to a certain behavioral system in an environment at home or wherever else, when that system continuously repeats itself over and over to the child becomes so experienced or so entrenched in this that they start to believe that this is them. So now, for example, let's say I grew up as a child who was maybe slightly obese, right? And my family, they looked at me and all the time they were unconsciously judging me or shaming me for it. And instead of motivating me in a way to maintain or manage my health, they started criticizing me for it. Maybe my cousins or my siblings started making fat shaming jokes. Maybe even my friends at school made those jokes. All of these people, this was a world whose love and approval I wanted. And instead, what did I get? I got judgment and rejection. So here's the key thing to what first creates shame that I want you guys to all know about. What we want is love and acceptance. And what we receive instead is judgment and criticism, or judgment and rejection. And what those things do to us now is that those things make us feel like there must be something wrong with us, and that's why people are judging and criticizing us. Here's another piece of science for you. When you're a child, you actually don't even have a developed enough forebrain, which means you have the reptilian brain, which is a survival brain, the thing that teaches you about pooping, crying, screaming, demanding for emotional attention, etc. But you don't have the forebrain that helps you be able to judge or decide what a rational situation is, why people are acting or behaving a certain way. You don't even have the ability to distinguish between certain relationships. This is why, for example, if you put a baby of any color, you put a brown baby, for example, with a black baby or a white baby, they don't know the difference. So they all just they resonate on love and communication. They just love being around each other. But this same baby, because he doesn't know the difference or anything, how does he understand who he is, or how does she get to know who they are? By continuously observing how the world around them treats them. This is a concept in neuroscience called neuroception. Now, how this is related to shame is if this baby only starts to realize who or what they are, what their value is, by being exposed to the world around them. But the world around them is continuously meeting them with judgment, with rejection, with opinionation, with criticism for who they are. What do you think this child is going to think of themselves? They're going to think that, okay, if I base my identity watching how the world treats me, but the world's treating me like shit, that must mean that my identity is so messed up or destroyed, and that's why they're treating me like this. They don't realize that, oh, my parents are so limited in their mindset. They grew up in the fucking 50s or the 60s. They don't really understand what LGBTQ means, or they don't really understand different religions, or they don't really understand my choice to live in a different country. A child doesn't know that. And so as the child grows up continuously being exposed to that, they now internalize it as themselves. So shame, when you take it now to your relationships, unconsciously, shame is like a bag. It's like a really, really heavy fucking suitcase that you're carrying everywhere. And you're expecting yourself to run, to fly, to sing and dance, but you always have this fucking heavy suitcase in your hand. And so everywhere you go and you try and create love, everywhere you go and you try and connect with a partner, everywhere you go and you try and live with freedom, you can't. Because there's an old version of you that's still being judged and shamed and criticized. Hey, and welcome to the Inner Yats YouTube page. If you like our content, make sure you click the like and the subscribe button so that you get more of these amazing videos that keep coming your way.